Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Today marks exactly 20 years since the Christmas comedy classic Elf went into production on December 9th, 2002. I spoke to comedy legend Bob Newhart about his memories of playing Papa Elf across Will Ferrell, James Caan, and Ed Asner. We also discuss his iconic TV sitcom career from The Bob Newhart Show to Newhart, and even his experience voicing Bernard in Disney's animated classic The Rescuers. Hey, Mr. Bob Newhart. Hey, thank you for joining us on WTOP in Washington, D.C.
Hi, Jason. Hi.
Where are you calling us from? Is it Los Angeles?
LA, yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, we really appreciate you taking the time to join us. It's not every day we get to talk to a legend like yourself. This is fantastic. Thank you. Well, I wanted the reason we're talking, we should tell our listeners, is because 20 years ago on December 9th, it'll mark 20 years since Elf went into production. And 2 decades later, it is a bona fide holiday classic. I think it was the second it came out, an instant classic. Of course, you played Papa Elf, Buddy's adopted dad, and the narrator of the whole thing. But what was your reaction the very first time you read the script? Like, could you tell it was sparkling even on the page?
Well, I read it and I told my wife, I said, I think this is going to be a perennial. I think this is going to be the same as Miracle on 34th Street. It's just, it was warm. It was well written, well directed, Jon Favreau. And Will was marvelous. I mean, it could have been, except for John and Will, it could have been just like a jerk, you know? a guy who you dismiss him right away, but with Will's charm, you believed him and you wanted him to succeed, and that really is what made it work.
Oh, that's such a good point, because on the page, you know, if it was a different performance, it could have totally flopped or felt over the top or whatever. But the Will Ferrell is so lovable as Buddy the Elf. And do you think it's sort of that fish out of water innocence? You know, like when he's shouting Santa, oh my God, I know him. You believe that he's actually excited.
That's right. That's right.
But what was Will Ferrell like that? You know, did he stay in character on set? Was he that bright-eyed, bushy-tailed Buddy even when the cameras weren't rolling?
Oh yeah, he was. He did a very interesting thing, because all those years on Saturday Night Live, you know, that's sketch acting, and
yeah,
this isn't sketch acting. This is acting, and there are two different forms of acting, and sketch is much broader, and Will was able to make that transition.
Absolutely. He always said smiling is my favorite. And I think it is for all of us too. Every time we watch the movie, we can't help but smile. And then I guess more of a bittersweet note now, because James Caan just passed away. He's so good in the movie as Walter Hobbs, sort of that big city publisher who doesn't realize he's Buddy's biological father. And I guess why do you any memories of working with Jimmy Caan, either on Elf or I'm sure you knew him for years.
I remember
even before.
we went. I took several of my grandkids along with my wife and my daughter, and we went to a screening of it, and we were laughing and having a great time. And then Jimmy Caan was there with his wife, and so it came to, because I'm all pretty much in the front part of the movie. So my final scene, I said, well, we got up and started to leave. I said, well, that's all I'm in.
And James Caan, did he say, wait a minute, you got to watch my scene. Stick around.
He laughed.
Did you actually leave, or did you sit right back down?
We sat back down.
All right, that was nice of you. Oh, that's great. But do you think they're sort of banter where, like, why do you think it worked? Do you think because Will Ferrell is so exuberant, but then James Caan, I guess he's sort of the straight man, I guess. But like, what about why do you think their banter works so well?
Um, I think it was its time. The message was warm and people wanted to believe in it. And they just needed 20 years ago, as they do today,
Yeah.
because they keep showing it and showing it. People need that charming, wonderful thing about the Christmas spirit and its way of powering the sleigh.
Yes, singing loud enough for all to hear, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Spreading Christmas cheer. I agree with you when you say you think it's going to be a perennial. It'll be around forever, like A Miracle on 34th Street, or It's a Wonderful Life. Every year, people will watch it. Did you? I assume it was intentional, but every time I watch it, and Buddy has his all is lost moment there on the snowy bridge. Are they trying to do an It's a Wonderful Life, George Bailey on the bridge, and then instead of Clarence the Angel, it's sort of Santa's sleigh that snaps out of it. But are you guys consciously going for an homage there?
Uh, I don't know. That's really up to John Favreau
Yeah,
and Will, if that's what they were going for. It's a very nice touch.
it really is a nice touch. And speaking of John Favreau, do you think a lot of times comedy directors don't get nearly as much credit for pulling it off, but do you think John Favreau's contribution to that is still underrated? Everyone talks about Will Ferrell and you and the cast, but I mean, John really pulled it all together.
Yes, he did. He did. And then the next thing I saw John do, I forget, but it was this highly technical movie and he was able to pull that off also. So he's a wonderful director.
Yeah, this was before. I mean, I'd seen him acting in some stuff, obviously, but I think this was before he directed Iron Man and launched that whole Marvel
Yeah,
beast that
yeah,
is
that's right.
still going today. So Elf was before that, kind of got him going. No, he's a great director. So do you still have young fans coming up to you about Elf that maybe had never even seen, any of the Bob Newhart show or any of that? Like, do they know you only as Buddy's narrator, Papa Elf?
Well, when I was on the road doing stand up, occasionally I get a note saying, "My two sons are here. Could we come backstage? And they'd like to meet Papa Elf." And I say, "Yeah, okay." And so they come back, but they look at me like, "That's not Papa Elf. That's a guy, you know."
Who's this guy? They don't know that you're the Bob Newhart.
No, they don't know what John did in the
Yeah.
movie. And another example of how wise he was. It's what they call force perception.
Mm.
And all my scenes with Will, I'm 10 to 12 feet behind him. So that
Right.
I look smaller.
Right. That perspective stuff, like
Yeah,
they did on Lord of the Rings and that kind of stuff for the
yeah,
Hobbits too.
sure.
Yeah. Wow, that's a really cool camera angle
Well, because
tidbit.
he wanted actors. He didn't want um, tiny people. I think they're called today.
Right, little people, I think is what the phrase is now. But
Yeah.
yeah, they wanted, they that way they could cast Bob Newhart, and you could have, the famous legends of the past playing these roles. You could get Ed Asner. Any memories of Ed Asner as Santa Claus? Like on you're two legends getting to share the screen there. But any Santa memories with Ed on set?
Well, as you know, Ed passed
Yeah.
not too long ago, and yeah, we were on the same lot. We were on the Radford lot, which was Mary Tyler Moore
Mm-hmm.
in our show, and also Seinfeld later on. So we'd see each other. We'd go to the commissary, and it was hi Ed, hi Bob, and we'd have lunch, and they were great times. And now I read in the paper that the famous Radford lot, which was think it was a Forster. It was a Republic Studios lot originally, and they did a lot of westerns there. Uh, and I think it was a 4 star, and then it became CBS. And there's lot of history behind the lot. My kids, they come to rehearsals, and right outside our stage 17 was the back lot uh, of Gunsmoke,
Wow.
the Western.
Yeah.
So they bring their cameras and they shoot their movies, and they had this $1 million set to use.
Your, your kids are like, hey, that's Marshall Dillon. That's Miss Kitty.
That's right. Yeah.
That's great. That's great.
But
Well,
they shoot their own movies there, and then we watch them, and we loved it. We loved it.
oh, that's great. I want to go into more into your iconic sitcoms before we run too. But real, before we even do that, I want to know, how you got into this whole comedy racket to begin with. I know you were born in Illinois in 1929. Whew, you're pushing the century mark. That is an accomplishment, my friend.
1993.
Yeah, exactly. 93 years old. Happy 93. Let's keep it going. But yeah, like growing up, what sort of stuff? I mean, this is before TV, obviously. Were there certain radio programs or comedians that, I want to know how you got into comedy to begin with.
Well, I really, I started as a stand-up comic.
Hmm.
I was a stand-up comic. I made a comedy record in 1960, and it far beyond my wildest dreams. It took off, and it became album of the year.
That was called The Button Down Mind of Bob Newhart, right?
Not mine, yeah. And so from 1960 to 1972, I was doing stand-up. And then Arthur Price from MTM came to me and he said, would you like to do television? I said, I'd love to do it because I'd like to get off the road and be with my family. And so that was how it originated. And I still continued then until last year doing stand-up. So that's my first love, stand-up.
Oh, and you could see it in all your work, whether it was the TV shows or I know you did you remember you played Major in the Mike Nichols film Catch 22, right? 1970. What was it like? I mean, he's also passed away. But man, what a comedy genius of a director. But I want to know, your memories of Mike Nichols just at work as a director. I mean, that guy was genius.
Oh yeah, no question about it. I was so thrilled to be asked to be in a Mike Nichols film, along with Buck Henry and all the great people, and Alan Arkin, Dick Benjamin, Paula Prentice,
Martin Balsam with Psycho fame.
yeah, and I'm trying to.
Wasn't Orson Welles in there too?
No, I was thinking John.
Yeah. John Voight.
John Voight, right? Exactly. Yeah.
Anthony Perkins. Yeah.
Tony Perkins. Yeah.
Yeah. Man.
Orson Welles.
Art Garfunkel. There's so many. Yeah. Wow. That must have been an experience. Yeah. Thanks for diving into that real quick. But of course, we got, before we run, my listeners will absolutely destroy me if I don't ask you about the famous, the sitcom days. So the Bob Newhart show runs 1972 to 78 on CBS, playing that famous Chicago psychologist, Robert Hartley. Whenever they rank the WGA ranks the greatest TV shows, it always comes in very high on these lists. It's an iconic show, but do you have any personal, favorite episodes? Is it Over the River and Through the Woods or Death Be My Destiny, or do they sort of all run together?
Yeah, there was well, I love those. It was great writing, and then there was a show where my voice today, I don't know what's wrong with it, but
you sound good, sir. Keep it going.
Okay. So I walk in and Carol says, you have a new patient. So I go in and the guy is there with his dummy. And so I said to him, what can I do for you? And he said that Danny, that was the dummy's name. He said, Danny wants to go out on his own.
Which of course is impossible.
It's impossible because the guy who's telling me is I mean, he's supplying the voice for Danny. So it was wonderful to just do the takes,
That's hilarious.
And
howdy doody, like a dummy, just wants to.
exactly.
He says he wants to go off on his own.
And the hardest part was you had to look, as an actor, you had to look at the actor, the ventriloquist. Yeah. You're not supposed to look at the dummy, but the voice is coming from the actor.
That must have been so hard to not just crack up and break up. Well, because you're known for that great deadpan, but like to not react to this dummy telling me he wants to walk. I'm crying, laughing, just talking about it. Oh, that's fantastic. And then, of course, real quick, then Newhart was the other show from 1982 to 1990, and you played that Vermont innkeeper, Dick Loudon, one of the all-time great shows, and, of course, one of the all-time great series finales that everyone talks about, where the town is bought by this tycoon and turned into his golf course, and you and your wife decide to stay in the inn, but, of course, it's in the middle of the golf course with balls flying. You get hit by the golf ball, and people yelling quiet, all that stuff, and then, of course, you wake up to the famous Just a Dream we've seen repeated so many times. But memories of when you first read the script of that finale, and did you know it was going to go down as an all-time finale when you read it?
Oh yeah, it was. It was my wife's idea, as a matter of fact. It was. We were in the 6th year, I think, of Newhart, and they were moving us. CBS was moving us around different time slots. And I didn't think it was right. I thought the show, we established 9 o'clock on Monday night as a hit time slot, and I thought that they should leave it there. So we were going to a Christmas party, and we were waiting in line to get a picture taken. And I said to my wife, I said, I think this is going to be the last year of the show. I said, because CBS, I don't like the way they're treating the show. The show has been good for them, and I don't like the way it's being treated. And she said right there in line, without a second pause, she said, you ought to end the show on a dream sequence, because there's so many inexplicable people. Larry, Daryl, and Daryl, they were right out of Deliverance. And what are they doing in Vermont? And of course, all the townspeople and Tom Poston. And I said, honey, that's a great idea. So I settled the problems with CBS. So in the 8th year, the final year, I gave it to the writers, and they came up with a script on the golf course, and we still hear about that.
Oh, it is one of the greats. Thank you so much for sharing those memories. I'm just smiling ear to ear, remembering and thinking about those episodes.
Jason, before I leave, I gotta mention a dear friend. He was a senator from Vermont, where the Newhart show was developed, and Pat is retiring now, and we're losing one of the great senators, Senator Pat Leahy from Vermont.
Oh, well, that's great that while we were talking about the Vermont innkeeper there, your character, that you give a shout out to an actual Vermont figure there. So yes, thanks for making time for that. And personally, on a personal note, I know we're going to wrap it back around to Elf here to close it out, but I wanted to thank you for voicing another voice of my childhood, Bernard in Disney's Rescuers. Rescue Aid Society. We can still sing and Rescuers Down Under. But
I heard they're re-releasing that.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Oh, great. That's fantastic. And of course, Ava Gabor is Miss Bianca. As a kid, I called it Miss Binaka, like the breath freshener. I don't know why, but it's Bianca. But any memories of that really quick before we go? You know, what was it? I mean, you're going to be not only Elf, but also Rescuers. You're two iconic
I remember
children's roles.
I don't know how much time we have, but the interesting thing, it's just your voice. So we'd do 4 or 5 pages, and then they'd animate it, and then we go in. So it'd be maybe 2, 3 months, and you'd be back there, and they say, okay, so let's see, okay, you just flown on the back of an albatross from DC to Louisiana. And I said, right. So how do you think you'd feel? I said, well, probably tired, flying in the back of an albatross from all the way from. We have these very serious discussions.
Yeah.
I had to bite my lip.
How do you play that with your? Yeah, they're like, hey, now pretend you were on an albatross. Like, how do I play that with my voice? I'll try. I'll try to sound tired, I guess. Well, you've been more than generous with your time. I really appreciate it. But we want to invite everyone to check out Elf again this holiday season. And Will Ferrell has a new Christmas Carol movie out now too. That's really good, called Spirited. He's still doing great stuff. But check out Elf. 20 years ago went into production, and just final seconds, Mr. Newhart. Like when you add all this up, from Elf to the sitcoms, and when you add it all up and look back on it, when you finally hang up your cap, like what do you want people to remember you by? Just bringing laughter in a time of conflict and serious. Like it's important to make people laugh. I mean, what do you want your legacy to be?
Well, I mean, when you devote a career to making people laugh, I mean, what better thing in the world is that? No, I feel very good about my career. And one of the greatest sounds in the world is laughter. And I fell in love with it the first time I heard it. And 60 years later, I was still doing
it. I love it. And 93 years later, you're still doing it. Well, thank you so much for joining us, the legendary Bob Newhart. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jason.
All right. Be well. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.
Explain your DNA on 10 cases, man.
You're inside the police interrogation room with the alleged Potomac River rapist.
I'm not guilty on any of this stuff.
So calm, so reasonable. Could this be the man who terrorized women for 9 years before murdering a brilliant scientist 2 decades ago? Experience one of the most fascinating true crime podcasts available. Join crime reporter Paul Wagner for Unknown Subject, Season 3 of WTOP's American Nightmare series. Search American Nightmare Podcast on all podcast platforms.
I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play. Listen local with Podcast DC.